Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's What's Up Wednesday. My name is Colleen Rohrig. I'm an Early Learning Ventures, Early Head Start, Childcare Partnership Specialist, and I reside currently in Grand Junction, Colorado. Today, I am joined by Gary Romano, who is the CEO of Civitas Strategies, to share about their retirement tool. Welcome, Gary, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
All right. Well, thank you to everyone who is joining us live today as well. If you have not heard of us before, we are a 501c3 nonprofit based out of Colorado, and our mission is to expand access to quality and affordable childcare. I have links in the description of this video to take you to our website where you can learn more about us and our resources offered, as well as access to our full What's Up Wednesday playlist, because this has been going on for a while. So since we're live today, if you have any questions that come up while we are talking, please add them to the chat. And those questions will be followed up by one of our ELV team members later on this week, if you would, please. And we also, one other thing before we get started with Gary, is we have an exciting giveaway announcement that could save you anywhere from $300 to $1,200, depending on the size of your program. This is our existing Alliance Core users. This is for our existing Alliance Core users to win a one-year scholarship to use the system. To be entered to win, all you need to do is add a comment to our What's Up Wednesday videos answering this question. Ready? What do you do to take care of yourself outside of work? What does that look like? Whether that's going for a walk, taking a long nap, which sounds lovely, or reading a book. We would love to hear how you support yourself in your own well-being outside of caring for children or others. And if you're not familiar with Alliance Core and would like to learn more, please visit the link in the description of this video to learn more. Okay, well, thank you for that. So, Gary, let's get started on the questions.
Absolutely.
The first question we have, Gary, is can you start us off by introducing us to yourself and your role with Civitas Strategies, please?
Absolutely. It'd be my pleasure. I'm CEO of Civitas Strategies. We are a 15-year-old mission-driven organization, and we focus on helping forgotten businesses, as we call them. So these are small businesses, micro businesses that are so critical to families, but often lack the profit margin to be able to afford high quality support for their business, to keep it stable, to grow it over time. And that is what we do. And we work primarily with childcare businesses, both family care as well as centers across the nation. We do that only through government or foundation contracts. So we don't charge providers. This is not going to be some webinar where I'm going to say, and for $19.95, you could do this, right? We've worked with ELV in the past and had the pleasure of doing that and offering our services to providers. And we're always glad to help. And one of the subjects I love to talk about, in addition to taxes, is retirement. So I'm very excited to start chatting.
Well, great. So for those not familiar yet, can you give us a brief overview of Civitas Strategies and the retirement tool you're here to share with us today?
Absolutely. You know, as I mentioned, we work with childcare businesses across the nation. And I think at this point, we are arguably coaching or have coached more childcare businesses than anyone else in the US. And we know retirement is really critical right now. And I think there are some, I think we go towards the kind of obvious one. There's a lot of folks like myself, who are getting older and getting close to those retirement years and saying, gosh, do I have enough? But we're also seeing it as we see Gen Z enter the workforce and start entering into working at and owning centers and family care operations. We're seeing them talk about it because many of them are coming from having had a quote unquote W-2 job, right? Where they had their retirement guided by their contributions taken by the company. And so it felt easier, right? Now they're on their own. They have all the benefits of being an entrepreneur, but this is now something they have to self-manage. So it could feel overwhelming. And that leads to this tool, is that we started to look at ways at how do we make this simpler and easier for childcare providers, the business owners in particular, to be able to access this information and make informed decisions about retirement for them, their family, and their employees.
All right. So, Gary, what led to the creation of the retirement tool, and how did you recognize the increasing need for retirement support in the early childhood education sector?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably flip those two, right? Like, so the need we saw very clearly in a number of projects we were doing. So we're currently doing statewide coaching in a number of states, including Georgia, for example, Wisconsin. We support WICA there. Indiana, we support Spark. We support West and Growing Up New Mexico and New Mexico and CDFA and New Hampshire, as well as other regional projects. So we're doing a lot with providers. We also just finished a 3-year stint in Texas, providing business coaching to all 15,000 childcare providers in that state through an ARPA funded project. And so we had a lot of business owners talking to us, asking us questions about retirement. And again, it was those two generations in particular, right? Those who are getting older, who are
Mhm.
getting close to retirement. But then we also had on the other side of it, these younger folks entering the workforce and saying, how am I going to do this, right? Is this worth my doing still? Can I ever retire, right? Is that possible? In terms of the genesis of it, it came about a year and a half ago. Yeah, actually, almost 2 years now, when another leader in the field had said to me, "Gosh, Gary, you're doing a lot of this work. You're coaching a lot of people around retirement in the childcare world. How can we make it as simple as possible to help them understand and navigate?" And what I did was I sat down. Our team has done even more, but I just sat down and started looking at the 250 plus cases that I had done personally. And, because when you look at retirement options, easily there's like 50 or so I could come up with immediately, right? There's different types of annuities, there are trust options, right? There's 401ks, there's traditional IRAs, there's Roths, right? There's all these acronyms being thrown at you. But what I found was when I talked to providers, to these business owners in childcare, whether it's a center or family care providers, what I found was really only 4 scenarios came up again and again. That's it.
Wow.
And so those were the best fit because there's a lot of stuff out there, but a lot of that stuff isn't necessarily good for you. It might be good for the person selling it, but it may not be your best option. It may not be your best option as a business owner. And what we found was those 4 scenarios could then really be arrived at through 2 questions. And so when you have a simple decision tree like that, not only does it make it easier, right, to talk about, because we could say, here's the 4 categories that you can end up in, but also lends itself to automation, right?
Mhm.
Because now it's not even like there's a whole bunch of if then statements. There's only 2 questions asked leading to 4 scenarios. And that was it. And these have, by the way, held up since then because we've continued to use this tool. We use it externally. We'll tell you how you can access it free of charge. It's on our website. Spoiler alert. But we also actually use it in our coaching behind the scenes. That's how we help you determine if you talk to us. Same thing. So it was this genesis of how do you simplify it and realizing that it was far simpler than even we had realized in talking to childcare business owners about it.
All right. Well, Gary, there's a common myth that childcare providers or anyone that's self employed can't save for retirement. Can you share some insights about how the situation is evolving and what's preventing providers from making long term saving decisions?
I mean, so what I find are really, I think, 2 things when you pull apart that myth, right? There's something that I think childcare providers understand far better than a lot of those people at a leadership level. And I'm not trying to be insulting to anyone. I'm just saying this has been my observation. And that is many of them know it can be done. And I'll explain more about that in a minute. They know that they can get the money very often. They also know that part of it is going to be Social Security. And, we're currently reviewing a manuscript. I did a book on retirement that we're still, hoping to have published soon. But one of the things I did was I did a very deep dive into the politics around Social Security. And the reality is that, look, Social Security has some structural problems to it. All signs point to it will be there. It will probably be less for some of us than we would want, but it's still going to be there. And when you come down to it, Social Security is a huge potential chunk of your retirement. And now it doesn't mean don't save money. You want to save money. It's not enough in and of itself, but it does become a key part of this that makes it a lot more obtainable, right? And that's why we do see providers retiring all the time, right? So now, but I think, again, I think a lot of leaders don't see that, but the providers do. They know the importance of it. So now the other part of that question is, what happens to the provider? What we find again and again, in fact, I was in Tennessee at a conference recently speaking with family childcare providers about this very topic. And a couple of them came up to me after and they said, that's so true. And what I had said was, again and again, I see childcare business owners who can set aside the money. They could figure it out. The problem is they don't know where to put it. So what happens is the money goes into their checking account or their savings account, and it sits there because they don't know this other part we talked about. Like, should I use a SEP IRA? Should I use this? Should I use that? Where do I put it? And because of that, and because it's so complicated on the surface, right? They freeze up, which is totally understandable. It's not a criticism. It's totally makes sense. And then what happens is the money doesn't get invested. And after a while, they say, well, I will just have to rely on my spouse's money, because their check, it's being deducted in their check. So we'll maximize that and we'll use my money more for, the home budget and all of that, or some other thing where the money just gets reallocated essentially. So the possibility is there, but it's what we call information asymmetry. In other words, some people have the information here, but you don't have the information here. So then it's hard for the person who needs to make the decision to make that decision. So it's about bringing those things together that we see helps alleviate that problem.
All right. Now, Gary, can you walk us through how the retirement tool works and how it helps guide users towards the best retirement plan options?
Absolutely. So when you go to our site, right, and you look under resources, or you can go directly to www.civstrat.com retirement, right? When you go there, you'll see a page that comes up and there's the link for the retirement tool, but then there's also a 3-part piece that we put together that gives you a little bit more detail, right? So if you want to understand further what we're talking about, right, we're all about giving you information. We don't want it to be, oh, just trust me, just do it. No, you're a business owner, you're a responsible adult, right? You deserve to know what we're talking about and why. So those documents will help you get more information. But when you hit the retirement tool, it brings you in and it starts asking you questions, right? And if we go into it, I said it was easy. I promised you, right? First question is the retirement plan just for you and your spouse, or do you need to cover employees? And that's because the choices do differ a little bit there. If it's for you and your spouse, we ask you a question, which is, and this is, again, kind of based on how you accumulate money over time. Are you under 40? Are you over 40? That's easy, right? On the other side of it, if you say it's for you and your employees, do you want to do a fixed amount every year, right? So it may be that you want to be able to advertise, our center does 3% retirement match, right? And you want that to be known. On the other hand, it may be, you know what, Gary, I'm not sure how much we're going to make this year. And I want to help the retirement of our employees, but I can't make a commitment about a percentage until I know where we stand at the end of the year. Okay, so you can't commit to a rate. That's okay too. Those are the only questions it asks. And then what happens is you get an output that says, here's what we recommend. And it's really that simple.
Wow. So, how does this tool simplify the process for providers in deciding where to allocate their retirement funds or what the next step is after they've started setting money aside?
Absolutely. So what it does tell you is it suggests the vehicles that you should be considering. So again, as we talked about, there's lots of different options out there. And again, like we've talked about annuities, there's a whole variety of insurance products that come out all the time. There's SEP IRAs, there's simple IRAs, right? And again, what it does is it says to you, for example, right? If let's say you are over 40 and it's just you and or your spouse that you want to cover, right? Um, in that case, right? So let's say you're a family care provider, you're over 40, it would recommend a SEP IRA. And again, the documentation can explain to you a little bit further as to why. Um, and secondarily, if you want to diversify that or you have some additional money that comes in, then consider a Roth. And again, like we go into it in more detail, but the reasons why, just kind of top level, is when you're doing a SEP IRA, it's a business deduction. So yes, you're not going to pay income tax on it, but it also doesn't means you're not paying any sort of self-employment tax. That's good, right? You just boost your versus like a traditional IRA where it's already gone out of your business. You paid business tax. Now it's a deduction personally, but it gives you just a little bit more. Um, the other advantage there is, if we do have some providers who moonlight, who may have a W-2 job where they can put money into there. Because of the way the SEP is structured, there's no conflict there. So you don't have to worry about getting in trouble with the IRS of contributing too much. The Roth IRA, it's post-tax, which means you don't get the tax deduction now. But when you're retired, it's tax-free income. So it's good to diversify, right? But if you're over 40, chances are you're making more money than you did when you were younger. You want that deduction now. And, rather than having it in retirement. The opposite tends to be true. If you're younger, we usually recommend do a Roth first, just because that money will accumulate even more and become even bigger over time. And then it's tax free when you retire. So that's how it helps.
Great. So, Gary, this next question is a two-part question, so I'll read both parts of it and I'll let you respond. What
Sure.
kind of feedback have you received from users of the retirement tool so far? And then, can you share some success stories of how this tool has empowered childcare providers to take control of their retirement planning?
Absolutely. So, the way it's helped is, and the way that they felt empowered is exactly what we talked about. Is again and again, we've had folks who have reached out to us who've said, I can get the money. And we're like, I'm not trying to make it sound like they're sitting on the, like Scrooge McDuck sitting on this huge pile of gold, right? But I can set aside some money for my retirement. Or, we'll often talk about it. Another thing that we do that I know Jennifer Vale, who's one of our fine associate directors, can be, I can't remember if she's already talked about it or she will be talking about it on your podcast. My apologies. I remember the timing, but she's going to be talking to you about taxes and how to save money on taxes. And so sometimes we'll even bring that up and say, look, Colleen, you just saved some money on your taxes. Now here's an idea of how you can invest it in your future. And so this helps them, again, not have that information asymmetry about knowing what to do with it and which vehicle to put it in. And again, we've seen it over and over with providers. I mean, I think about one I just talked to just a couple of weeks ago who, exactly that case. She owns a small center. She wasn't sure what to do. This empowered her and gave her the ability to do it. And it wasn't through, um, you have to buy it from us and this is the way it has to be. And all of those things, but she was also able to choose where she wanted to do it, which is critical as well.
Oh, great. So, then how do you envision this retirement tool evolving?
Absolutely. So we've already started to evolve it, and we do have some guides around it that I could share. We don't have it on the web page yet, but part of what we're looking at now is, okay, so you've chosen the SEP IRA, for example. Now the next logical question is, and where do I put the money within the SEP IRA? And so we actually have a guide, free of charge. All our stuff, by the way, is free to childcare providers. We often have different communities that pay for it. So you may get a link to a different state or something. It's the same information. But in that case, what it's doing is it's describing now, how do you actually physically set this up? So what do we recommend? We usually recommend going to one of the bigger firms. I'm not saying that because we get like a percentage from Charles Schwab or Fidelity or something, but because what we find is they have technology that makes it so easy to set up. I mean, the last time I set up a SEP IRA, it took me less than 15 minutes from start to finish. I mean, it's really quick and easy. And usually they will then guide you through those investment choices. And what we say is, certainly if you're comfortable with that, use it. Those automated tools are just excellent. If not, if you want to pick your own, what we always say is go with an index fund or a time targeted fund. And what I always say is, if you follow Warren Buffett, that's his number one vehicle. They're cheap, they're easy, right? An index fund is just a number of small holdings, right? So if you have a S&P 500 index fund, it means they have a little bit of stock in all the Standard & Poor 500 companies. And what we found is, statistically over time, that typically beats the person who is actively investing, who is saying to you, I've got this hot tip and I'm going to move the money over here and then I'm going to do this. It tends over time to outperform that, even from professional investors. So it's a good way to plant your money. And time targeted funds are ones where you say something like, I plan to retire in 2040. So Vanguard may have a 2040 fund. You put your money in there, and there's a professional who slowly changes the mix of that fund over time to reflect the needs of that you have, right? So it starts off more aggressive when you're younger, and then slowly becomes more conservative as you get older, but it does it all for you. And they're cheap, which is also important, is we're talking about vehicles that are not going to cost you a lot of money, so that it's really maximizing your retirement. But that's the next place we want to go, is integrating that information into this tool. So you'll just be able to say, okay, it's recommended a SEP or a Roth. Now what do I do to set it up? And where might I want to make those investment choices?
Oh, great. For those who are watching right now and are ready to get started or to learn more, where should they go?
They should go, and I think I can put stuff in the chat. Let me just put it in the chat. Whoops. I just messed that up again. My apologies. Apparently, I need to just like look down for a minute and get the right keys. Copy. Okay, I'm putting this in the comments. Connect. I have to connect my YouTube, apparently. Sorry about this. I didn't realize. Apparently, it is not connecting. So let me say it. Colleen, maybe you can put it in because I can't. It's www.civstrat.com.
Could you spell that for us, please?
Yeah. CIV as in Victor, STRAT.com. And then /retirement.
Okay, and we'll make sure that gets added into the chat. Not certain I can do it right now, but we'll make sure that gets added into the chat. And then any final thoughts, Gary, you want to leave us with?
I guess two, right? So one, and thank you, Kelly. I was about to say hi, Kelly
Thank you,
Matthews,
Kelly.
who's from WICA. We were talking about going to Wisconsin and how Ms. Kirk is already there from ELV. So Kelly Matthews, I'll be seeing you tomorrow. Glad you're on, and thank you for putting that in there. I mean, what I would say is this: is that I think we do hear a lot, going back to your questions earlier, about this can't be done, it's impossible, give up. It isn't. Mathematically, it can be done. And those pieces that we have on there, you could take a look at them and get an idea of just how compound interest works, how your money accumulates over time. This is possible. And so, get started. Even if you don't have a whole lot of money right now, even if you say, I can't commit to doing it every week or every month, okay, get started with what you can right now, because over time, that's going to build towards your retirement. And so there's no reason not to at least be putting some money away for it.
All righty. Well, two things, Gary. Thank you so much for taking your time to share your knowledge and your expertise with us today. It was very informative and has given us lots and lots to think about.
Thank you
And
for
that,
having me.
oh, we do appreciate your time. And then just remind everybody, thank you for joining us today. And don't forget to enter our giveaway. And we'll see you next time on What's Up Wednesday. Thank you all.
Thank you. Take care.